Alright, good afternoon, everybody. Not sure where to go with this, but, I think I'm probably one of those people who is so over the, living in the U.S. because of all the bullshit that's been going on. Now, this isn't like a doom or gloom video. I know I've said this before, and I'll say it one more time, if somebody does, in fact, buy my tracker, then I'm gonna get a fucking plane ticket and get the fuck out of here. And just not give a fuck. Fuck, back to fucking, Santa Cruz in a illegal spot, board my flight, and then fucking leave. It'll no longer be my problem. Let Hyundai and city officials duke it out. Again, this isn't a doom or gloom type of video, I'm not one of those trying to flee the U.S. to avoid debt. You just gotta look for other opportunities and just gotta see which ones are gonna have the opportunities. Ooh, a little crow. I mean, there'll be certain things you miss and all that crap. I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, when I moved from Massachusetts to Virginia, I mean, there's certain things about Massachusetts that I miss. I mean, that's where most of my connections are. I don't have too many down here. I got, a couple of family members. And, because of my situation, I had to miss a memorial. Maybe if I had gone, maybe I'd have a job, But, I can't go back in time. I have to move forward. So I was there in spirit, well, having an interview and taking care of other shit. So that's that. And, again, if you really want to know all my deep thoughts and all that shit, I'm going to post more of those on my Patreon. I know more people will probably rather buy a latte than subscribe to someone's Patreon, but, fuck it, give it a shot, see what happens, You never know unless you try, and if it doesn't, then just, get rid of that method, switch up your tools. And, that's where it's at right now, And, it's basically, the U.S. has basically become unaffordable to live. And we're supposed to be, this first world nation, supposedly, most powerful nation, all that good stuff. And yeah, I mean, there are some good things about the U.S., obviously, freedom of speech, Second Amendment, equal opportunity, should be equal opportunity for all, but, I can understand the merit-based side of things. Now, whether the whole DEI thing was, illegal or all that, that's neither here nor there, because I highly doubt that they would just drag some insert non-white person of choice off the street and make him or her a doctor. I highly fucking doubt that, Those people had to have merit as well to get the position. And, honestly, I know some of the right-wing people that like to say test scores are lowered and all that. I'd like to see where that was proven. Because they're making the statement that, test scores were lowered, to get more, blacks and all that stuff. I want to see documented evidence of that. And it may be out there. I mean, I don't know. I don't put my focus into, looking all that shit up. But, inquiring minds do want to know. And, You know, I also want to know where, you know, the left side also gets some of their stuff. You know, I did a video a while back regarding, you know, it was a response to Tom Powell's video on, you know, once again, not a trans, not a this or that, and, you know, proportionately, or no, let me rephrase that. What's the fucking term I'm using for? Statistically, you know, the crimes that happen, you know, the majority of them are not by woke teachers or trans or LGBT or any of that. But I also threw in the caveat of, you know, percentage from, you know, percentage, you know, because, you know, trans only make up 1% of the population. We'll go with that number, just a nice even number. And if a small percentage of the population, you know, if you're hearing a certain amount of cisgender white men committing heinous crimes, and then, you know, a similar percentage of, you know, trans woke school teachers doing the same thing, you know, it kind of begs the question, will the percentages line up? You know, will they be the same? Will they be different? Well, enough about that. You know, we're so divided. The America that I knew is gone. You know, you can't even have a disagreement with anybody without fucking disowning them. And this is what they wanted. You know, they wanted to see people disown each other. This is exactly what they wanted. And both the right and the left fell for it. They fell for it. They fucking fell for it. You know, and that's why, you know, creators like, you know, Mr. Powell, you know, that's why he's so adamant about his hatred towards Trump supporters. And I'm sure some other channel, maybe the MAGA version of that. And, you know, again, that'll be, you know, a back and forth thing. And, you know, again, I've been sick and tired of following, you know, politics because, you know, one half it's just fucking noise. And, you know, it's really tough to discover, you know, which side is actually telling the truth, you know. And it's just noise. And, you know, yesterday when I was renting a U-Haul, you know, a trailer, you know, towed my car to the shop, you know, my daily, there was another gentleman there, you know, who tried to walk and they couldn't. And, you know, so he made the reservation. You know, he and I started chatting a little bit. And, you know, he was from Greece. You know, a nice enough guy, you know, all that crap. You know, Greece is a wonderful country. And it probably is. It probably is. That might be another fucking hotspot that people don't think about. And, you know, his wife's from America. I know, that's kind of like the reverse of what you usually see. You know, you usually see, you know, the passport bros. You know, this is like the reverse. You know, or maybe he could have been a passport bro in a different way. He just came to the U.S. And, you know, obviously he's married, so, you know, he did something right. So it might have been like a reverse, you know, a different kind of passport bro. You know, I highly doubt he fled to the U.S. just to fucking look for American women because the women in Greece are no good. You know, I highly doubt that was the case. You know, it was probably just in the right spot at the right time. Nice enough guy, you know. And he wants to move back to Greece. You know, but of course, you know, his wife's diehard American. So there's that, you know, trouble in paradise there. And, you know, again, you know, with all this, you know, uprooting, you know, next thing you know, countries are no longer going to be the countries they once were. You know, the Alps is going to fucking change. You know, it's just the way the world's going, you know. And, you know, I've gotten so over the cost of shit in the U.S., including my car, that, you know, it's just, yeah, it's got to look, just got to look elsewhere, you know.